Hey there, I'm Rambo. I'm a digital imaging ambassador for Sony here in New Zealand. So I managed to get my hands on an early release of the brand new Sony Alpha 1. It's a new flagship model in the full frame mirrorless line. So when I looked at their specs originally, I just couldn't believe it. They'd made a 50 megapixel camera that could shoot 30 frames per second. So the first thing I thought of was 30 frames per second. That's as fast as video. Does that mean I can shoot stills with this camera and stitch it together into video? So I thought I'd make a quick YouTube video here and show you what I managed to achieve with this camera, and did I manage to make a video out of stills. So the Sony Alpha 1 is not actually this camera. So the Alpha 1 I had to give back to Sony yesterday for their release. But the Alpha 1 has an extra hard dial on top here that the A7R4 doesn't. So unfortunately I couldn't fit the Alpha 1 in any of my housing, so I wasn't able to try it out shooting water. So I thought, well, next best thing would be shoot some surfing from the land. So packed this guy up, the 200 to 600, and took a little road trip to Gisborne and linked up with Maz Quinn, who's a super legendary surfer here from New Zealand. So here's a few photos of Maz that I shot with the Alpha 1 and the 200 to 600. Super impressed by the focus on this camera. It was amazing. Every single frame I shot in this session was just tack sharp, spot on. It didn't miss focus on a single frame. So that was amazing. Some people might say that you don't need 30 frames per second to get a good photo, and I'm one of those people. But I usually shoot with the A7R4, which is 10 frames per second, and that's more than enough for most applications. But sometimes when I'm shooting surfing from the land or shooting empty waves from the water, I'll come across, 2 frames, and I'm just sort of wishing, man, if there was just 1 frame between those two, that would be like the ultimate photo. And the epic thing with the Alpha 1 is there's not 1 frame between those 2 frames. There's actually 2 frames between those 2 frames to choose from. So I wouldn't bore someone by showing them like a 30-shot sequence of someone surfing. It would just be painful to look at. But it's really cool just to be able to pull out like the peak moments from each maneuver, and just, you're never going to miss that sort of peak moment. So that's epic with this camera. So every time Maz went into a maneuver, I just hold my finger down and shoot the whole thing at 30 frames per second, just hoping that when I got home, I was going to be able to process them into a video. So I'm not super clued up with video, so it was a little bit daunting thing of the task. How am I going to make these still frames into a video? So I just did a quick Google. So the process of making the still images into video was actually pretty easy. All I did was went into QuickTime, clicked on File, go Open Image Sequence. Then I just navigated to where I'd saved the photo sequences. Selected all the images, choose media. From there, so then you choose your resolution, chose 4K, choose your frame rate, went up to 30 frames per second, and then in code 4, I've got no idea what that meant, so I just pushed open. Then it took a little while. I mean, it probably took sort of 20 minutes to stitch the 390 frames together. And so, yeah, and then it just spits out a QuickTime version of your video. Yeah, so here it is. This is a little video file I made of Maz. So you can shoot for around 5 seconds at 30 frames per second before it'll hit the buffer. So you probably wouldn't be able to shoot like a whole wave from start to finish, but you can definitely get a whole maneuver in there. So the faster your cards, the faster it's going to be to buffer. I had some really nice, fast Sony tough cards at the start, but I chewed through those super quick, and then I had just using some regular cards towards the end, and they were definitely taking quite a while to buffer. So if you want to shoot like this, you definitely want to have some really nice fast cards. Yeah, so that's it. I just wanted to hop on real quick so that you can make a video out of stills. There's heaps of amazing reviews of this camera online. In short, it's basically the best camera you could ever get your hands on. They've taken the high-res sensor similar to the A7R4, the video capabilities similar to the A7S III, and then like the full-on sports action sort of capabilities of the A9 II. If I was going to marry one camera forever, this would be the camera. All right, take it easy. See you guys.